Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning into this vlogcast. My name's Ryan, and I'm also joined by my friend Jake. We want to set out the stall really straight away. This is not going to be a professionally produced podcast. We're just here to talk about some professional Scrum, and we're going to start off by talking about our introductions and who we are. So, Jake, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. My name's Jake, as Ryan's just mentioned. In the process of leaving the military and fingers crossed transferring into the sort of Scrum Master and Scrum industry, we hope. 8 years in the British Army now, joined Royal Signals, so more sort of communications and IT focused. But for the last 5-6 years, it's been more of an instructor role within sort of military and the physical side, so more coaching and mentoring than comms. So that's me.
Cheers, Jake. And yeah, like I said, I'm Ryan. So I haven't had the honor of service, but well, I taught in a secondary school for 6 years, so I feel like I definitely did some form of service. I've been in the Scrum sector for the last 7 years. Like I said, prior to that, I was a teacher. I did work as a software engineer for a few years, realized I wasn't particularly good at writing code, but what I did have was some fairly good people skills. And therefore, like I said, the last 7 years or so, been a Scrum Master. I now run my own business, Optilearn, and I'm a professional Scrum Trainer with scrum.org. There you go. We've got out who we are, Jake. What Jake and I really want to try and do today is both of us kind of get approached fairly frequently about product and project management, people thinking, service leavers thinking about transitioning into those sorts of careers after their service. And I don't know about you, Jake, but do you get the same sort of questions over and over again?
Yeah, more so, especially on the obviously the Gendit network, the network you're both part of. A lot of people are focusing on the project management part, and then all of a sudden they stumble across Scrum, not quite sure what it is. Then they start seeing a few roles, and then they start going to courses. But their limitations of project management really sort of hinders their knowledge gap on it. So yeah, the questions come: what is Scrum?
Yeah.
What does a Scrum Master actually do? How does it differ from project management?
Exactly.
One of the big ones I've been answering quite a lot recently.
Yeah. So what we really want to try and do over this next 25 to 40 minutes, you can tell by that range we haven't particularly planned this very well. You might even see some really awful edits if my dog needs a wee or the postman turns up. So apologies for that. But yeah, we just want to try and answer those common questions, mainly because we can then say, go and have a look at this information, and then please do come to us if you've got any more questions. But because some of them are just so common, they're really fairly easy to answer. It's also a fairly lazy thing for me to do. Just be like, go and look at this video and then come back and ask me some questions. There's going to be 3 parts to this, so I'll be in all of them. You have to put up with my shiny forehead. The first one is going to be with Jake. We're going to do a bit of an introduction over the Scrum framework. The second one and the third one are going to both be days in the life. So ex-service leavers who have become Scrum Masters in the past year or so, or actually maybe a little bit longer in some cases, just to talk about what it's actually like, how they made the transition, and that kind of stuff. And the final thing to mention in this kind of purpose section is we're not trying to sell anything. We're not trying to persuade you to do this. It's just information, because you guys, most of you have a few LCAS, 1, 2, or 3 LCAS to use. That's a lot of money to spend. And I don't want people pissing them away just because they've said, oh, project management sounds like a pretty good thing to do, and go and talk to Ryan about this Scrum thing, right? They are worth a lot of money. So we want you to make sure that you use them on the right things. Ready to get into the meat of it, Jake?
Yeah, let's go. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Tell everyone what Scrum is, Jake.
Yeah, so background, I was on the professional Scrum Master course with Ryan a couple of weeks back, and posting pretty regularly now based on my knowledge of Scrum and the Scrum Guide. So as the Scrum Guide actually says, Scrum is a light work framework that helps people, teams, and organizations generate value. Okay, it's very simple to read once you look at the Scrum Guide. There's 3 main roles: product owner, Scrum Master, and the developers as well. Recently changed from development team, which I've been picked up on quite a few times by Ryan. So yeah, developers, product owner, and the Scrum Master.
Awesome. So yeah, Scrum as a framework it's not a methodology. That's the first thing to kind of hit. You're going to see, as you talk to people about product and project management, things like Prince 2. Prince 2 is great. Prince 2 is for construction. Fantastic. Still has a relevance. But if you're not going into construction, Prince2 has a lower value. APM is a very generic project management tool certification to do. So if you've got no project management experience, well worth considering APM. Scrum, though, is, like Jake just said, a lightweight framework. It doesn't tell you how to do stuff. It's a 10-page document freely available online that you can see right now. And it literally has those 3 accountabilities that Jake just mentioned: product owner, Scrum Master, and developers. And it basically just applies empiricism. Talk to people, find out what is the most important thing, do that thing, and then give it back to them. So Scrum isn't really considered project management. It's product management, because we don't really think about things in projects. We think about the product because that's the thing that delivers value. Tell them about maybe some of the, let's talk about the Scrum Master in specifics, Jake. What does a Scrum Master do on a day-to-day?
So the main things from my side is they are a coach. Okay, they're a mentor. They're not managing people. They're not setting tasks. They're not making sure there's milestones. They're not documenting. They're there to ensure that people are gaining the most value from Scrum and maximizing the value of the product, going through all the Scrum events and doing things correctly, really.
That's right. It's something you said to me actually a few weeks ago, which I must have mentioned 3 times to people since you told me. You said, in the military, we always use the phrase, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. And yet the first thing we always do is make a massive documented plan.
Yeah.
Scrum is very much not like that. We have artifacts, we have a product backlog. Think of it almost like, and this is a very bad analogy for those people who understand Scrum, think of it like a shopping list with a guide, right? We have something called a product goal. It's our overarching aim. And then we have a series of tasks that we think we need to do. They're called product backlog items to achieve it. Every sprint, so a sprint is up to 1 calendar month, a group of cross-functional skilled people will create a tiny goal, a step towards that overarching goal, and pull in pieces of work that we think we need to do. So even though Scrum is traditionally considered a software specific framework, and that is where it came from 25 years ago, believe it or not, it's only 7 years younger than me. It actually came from software, but it's now used in so many different domains. So you don't need to know anything about software in order to be able to be an effective Scrum Master. Would it help? Yeah, maybe understanding a bit about the software lifecycle. But beyond that, I've worked with my team for 9.5 months and I could barely tell you what product they produce. So do you think it has any applications in the military, Jake, Scrum? Like, you know, before we talk about like skills and transferable stuff, how could Scrum be used in the military?
So I think it's the skill set is what could be used. Scrum as a framework, there's definitely elements that could be utilized, but as a whole, I think so many people put on so many different hats that aligning people to one role may not work so well. But as we'll talk about shortly, there's a lot of things that do correlate between, like, retrospective. We do a lot of reviewing. You know, have we done this right? Can we do it better? And then implementing that change. But I'll cover more of that a bit later when we talk about the sort of transferable skills.
Awesome. So yeah, Jake's just mentioned some of those, like we call it a feedback loop in Scrum. I've already mentioned empiricism, gain transparency. You do a bit of inspection on the work, and stakeholders come and look at what you've produced, and then you adapt. It sounds common sense. And actually, when I do a lot of training with people from the military, people just go, do you know what? This is obvious, Ryan. And you know what? It is. I make a killing doing things and teaching people things that you would think would be obvious. The problem is the private sector doesn't have a lot of common sense. You guys, the people listening to this, service leavers, have a lot of common sense. You've been there, you've done that, you've had to respond at the drop of a hat to change things. What a Scrum Master does, and we'll talk about a product owner in a second, what a Scrum Master does is work with teams of people, typically about 10 in size, probably a bit smaller, and focuses on the process, the framework. The Scrum Master has a few accountabilities, one of which is coaching the team to be more cross-functional. You know, we don't have specialists, right? Jake doesn't just do testing. Ryan doesn't just do documentation. Steve doesn't just do, I don't know, user-fronted website stuff. We all work together in a team to get work done. And a Scrum Master will work with people, maybe do some facilitation, maybe do some conflict resolution, some mentoring, some coaching, like Jake said. But also they are there to kind of sometimes call out a little bit of the BS. You know, that's how things are going right now. Is that really the best way we could be doing things? They work with the team, they work with the product owner, and they work with the organization, because actually the organization and the culture is something that a Scrum Master is really heavily involved in. And they do a lot of it through facilitating the 5 Scrum events. I get to say this as a trainer now. Jake, can you remind us what the 5 Scrum events are?
Yeah, I can. Well, I'll try and regurgitate that. So you have the sprint planning, then you have the sprint itself, the daily Scrum, not called the stand up, as you've picked me up for again. So yeah, the daily stand up, you'll have the sprint review and the retrospective at the end, then take us back to the beginning.
Oh, ding, ding, ding. 10 points to Gryffindor. Yes, he's nailed all 5 there. And throughout the period of a sprint, like I said, less than 1 calendar month, my team do 3 weeks. I've worked with other teams that do 2. 1 week's fine as well. You will do that feedback cycle. And those Scrum events are, although they're not facilitated necessarily by the Scrum Master, the Scrum Master is ensuring and accountable for making sure they all happen effectively and improving that effectiveness. So we've talked a little bit about the Scrum Master then. We've talked about the events. We mentioned the product backlog, the product goal. Okay, what does a product owner do? Because the way I see it, right, there's those 3 accountabilities you mentioned. The developers, the people doing the work, don't want people thinking that's just coders. That's one that service leaders tend not to go into. But the other 2 are Scrum Master we've spoken about. What's a product owner?
So the product owner is the one that actually owns the product. Maybe not owns the product goal, but they're the ones that define the product goal, and then they're the ones that own the product backlog. So from that, so what are the tasks that need to be done for us to actually achieve the goal? From my perspective, I see a product owner as being the link between the business and the Scrum team to ensure that everything's happening, everyone's happy on both sides. So the team are creating maximum value, and the business are understanding what the team are actually delivering. So like the conduit, I suppose, between those 2 things. And they're just managing the product flow.
I'd say that's pretty spot on, right? What the product owner is doing is talking to stakeholders. So actually a product owner is almost quite external leaning as well. They'll talk to the stakeholders, the users of the product. And when I mention product, right, a product could be anything. It could be a piece of software, website. It could be my mobile phone. It could be my light that I've got here, my keyboard. Anything is a product if you look at it. And a product owner is the single person responsible for talking to stakeholders, users of that product, and translating those requirements back to the developers. To give you an example, right, if Jake was a Scrum Master and I was a developer, and I was creating this, all right, my nice little keyboard, I would expect Jake to be going out to industry, to customers, and finding out what they want this keyboard to do. Coming back to the developers, and Jake would say something like, I don't know, the stakeholders really want the shift key to be located here, or they want to have an on button, they want it to be wireless, they want it to have this range, this battery life. All right, I'm coming up with really fake things here, but that is what a product owner does. They try, by talking to people, to limit the guesswork that developers do. In Scrum, even though it might sound like quite a heavy framework, we maximize revenue and value. And that's what the product owner really is accountable for, maximizing value by finding out the right stuff to build rather than just guessing. So product owner is a stakeholder manager and value maximizer. They talk about requirements. They don't need to be technical, but understanding the domain really does help. So particularly in software, I find a lot of guys from Signals, a lot of guys from IT infrastructure, the project managers you've already got, all of that is relevant to a product owner. But more widely, you've also got Scrum Masters, right? Those people who can work within teams and just help people to get better. So they're both valid careers. Which one do you like the sound of the most, Jake? Which one do you think you'll align with?
I think to start with, it's definitely going to be the Scrum Master.
Why?
Again, it's that coaching aspect. So going into an organization, whether the team is already developed and they're already put in place, going in, seeing where they're currently at and at what stage of Scrum they're currently sitting at and where things could be improved. Um, and then just delving deeper into education, looking at the business. What's the business actually think of Scrum? Because if they hate Scrum, that's going to be a challenge straight away.
Yeah.
And that's the angle. But then I think the product owner, I know quite a few people that are currently in the process of resettling, and they would be a really good fit for that product owner role. So I think it's just an avenue that people really do need to look at as a potential career option for them.
It's a great thing you say, right, talking to the organization, because a lot of places will recruit for Scrum Masters, project managers, whatever. And actually then the support kind of ends. Whereas Scrum really needs that organizational support. And if you say things like, you know what, we need to be able to improve this in the team, we need to be able to do this. A Scrum Master is the one that holds some of those people to account and really chivies them along. They cause the removal of impediments to the team's progress. Doesn't mean that they are they're not a manager necessarily in the boss sense, but they do help to manage certain aspects of the framework. Every single accountability that we've mentioned so far is in charge of something. Product owner, maximizing value. Scrum Master, the process itself, and developers are the ones that do the work. No one tells them how to do it. If Jake is a builder building my house, I don't walk in every single minute and tell him to grout like this and use this mortar mix. And I don't show him how to, do technical things. That's not my job. That's his job. So 3 accountabilities working together to be an effective team. Before we move on then, Jake, to talk a bit about military and Scrum, anything else you want to add about the framework? I'm trying to think. We've given it a bit of an overview without going in too deep, I think.
Yeah, I think if we delve any deeper, then we're pretty much going to cover the whole of the PSM1 course. So
don't give all the game away.
Exactly.
If anybody is interested, right, just go to www.scrumguides.org. The Scrum Guide itself, I think, is 13 A4 pages long. Right, everything you read in there is Scrum. There's nothing else. You can take free courses on Udemy, ILX, IOSCM, wherever it is. The problem is a lot of those places didn't create Scrum, and they will try and they add a lot of information in either because it's not up to date or they try and conflate it with other frameworks. If it's in that document, it's Scrum. If it's not in that document, it might be a complementary practice, but it's not like you must do this. As I said at the start, Scrum is a framework. Think about it like, scaffolding around your house. The framework is what supports it. But if you decide as a team to add on a room, an extra practice that works for you, great. It doesn't make it Scrum. Scrum is what's supporting the success. And you never remove certain parts of the key framework, but a Scrum Master will uphold it and try to make it more efficient. So Jake, I'm going to do a bit of interview for you now.
Okay.
About military skills, right? So you said you're interested in being a Scrum Master. What skills do you have as your 8 years in the British Army that make you think you'll be a good one?
So everything that I've come across, I've had to analyze a situation. So very analytical in terms of looking at what I said earlier around finding out where we currently are, where we're trying to get to, and trying to make that happen in the middle. So some people might say problem solving, analytical mindset, whatever it might be. But understand that baseline and working forwards and improving the team or the value or whatever it might be, I think that's going to be a pretty valuable skill set. Adapting to change. Wow. if any organization changes more than the military, then hands down, well done to them. But yeah, being able to adapt to change, looking at things in a positive light, looking at how things can be implemented in the best manner. I think communication skills as well, being able to talk to people of various levels or just talking to people as human beings. I think, yes, the military is very hierarchical with rank structure and everything like that, but actually everyone eats food, everyone drinks, everyone has to do some form of exercise, stay nice and healthy, everyone struggles with stress. People are people, regardless of what rank they're wearing or what role they're in. So I think communicating at different levels is going to be quite key. And then the coaching and mentoring. So regardless of if you've done 12 years, 24 years, 4 years in the military, at some point you would have had to do some coaching and mentoring of some sort. So whether that's a new person's coming to the department, they're very inexperienced, you're going to have to bring them on. So you're going to have to mentor them to understand what the department's doing, what the organization's doing, what the team are meant to do, and then bring their skill set up in line with that. So I think those are the key sort of transferable skills. But one of the big ones is actually the especially the British Army, the values and standards that we abide by, and we get checked on quite a lot with the C drill. So courage, discipline, respect for others, integrity, loyalty, and selfless commitment. They align very closely with the Scrum values. So we're looking at commitment, focus, openness, respect, and courage. So if you put them both side to side, the Army's values and standards, as much as it pains me to say it, but they're there for a reason, and they align really close with what the sort of Scrum values are as well. So I think just that the way people act, the way people carry themselves, is just quite an easy transition over into that environment.
What do you think the purpose are of those values then in Scrum and also in the military? Like, what do they do?
It sets a standard.
Okay.
It sets a standard of dealing with other people. So openness, like you said earlier about calling out the BS, there's a reason for it. As long as it's done in a professional manner and a structured manner, then it's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
And just that respect for others, understanding people for being people.
From a Scrum perspective, one of the phrases, and I wonder if this resonates with the military side, is we say that those Scrum values are there because once they're lived, then trust is built. So the idea is that as a team, when we live in these values, if stuff hits the fan, it's never good stuff with sparkles, right? It's always bad stuff.
Yeah.
It's that you can absolutely rely on it. And from the folks I've spoken to who've done service, they always say they can have a laugh and a joke in the team.
Yeah.
When contact happens, game faces are on, and that's what the values are there for in Scrum and also in the military. Does that sort of sound similar?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you know that someone's got your back, regardless of what's going on. Like you say, you can have a bit of banter and have a laugh and a joke with each other. But yeah, like you say, when things do go off piste, then yeah, that they're there behind you to make sure things go smooth and get out of there safe.
Yeah. So in terms of then, because one of the most common conversations I have with people looking to do resettlement is CV. Now, I'm sure that there's hundreds of people that have talked about CV workshops. CVs are valuable to a point.
Yes.
From a military perspective, what kind of things, if you were looking to move into Agile, which we haven't really spoken about, but just as a highlight for those people listening, if you imagine Agile as just a way of thinking, a way of, on the spot, being able to adapt, Scrum is a framework, an actual way of doing Agile. So think about Agile as the big circle, Scrum is one option to do it. And it's the option that over 85% of teams in the world choose when they're developing products based on the State of Agile report. But there are other options. What do you think someone looking to get into this from the Army, the Navy, the RAF, what kind of things would they be putting on their CV?
I would focus on being part of a team. I mentioned it again around the coaching and mentoring, adapting to change. That's quite a big one, but also the problem solving. So, what examples of problem solving have you come across, or where have you had to manage stakeholders' expectations? So that could be a senior officer or whoever it might be, someone that you've had to go, look, hold my hands up, this hasn't gone right, but this is what we're going to do to rectify it, and this is going to be the outcome. So focus on those areas. And you can list all the other key skills like I mentioned around communication, but I think giving examples of communications and managing stakeholders' expectations, problem solving, and showing a sort of analytical mindset, and then that sort of coaching and mentoring in a teamwork / leadership environment would be the key areas that I'd focus on.
For some of the CVs that I read, and I can say this as a civilian with no military experience, right? I don't know whether your rank is high or not. I spoke to a guy yesterday, Derek. He's a chief petty officer in the Navy. I've spoke to a lovely brigadier. I spoke to a 4-star general the other day. I mean, I know that one's quite high, right? But generally in the middle, I
Yeah,
sort of have no idea if you're really senior or not. But to be honest, it doesn't matter.
yeah.
You're going to be a civilian, and no one else will care about your rank or maybe even know your ex-mil. So one thing I would encourage is when you're doing your CV, right, forget writing your rank because it is not going to win you any points. Talk about the outcomes, not the outputs, right? The outcomes. What behavior change did you manage to effect within your squadron, your unit, your battalion? I hope these words are relatively correct. But what did you do? And numbers can help. You know, we delivered a 10% year on year resource saving by doing this process that we brought in, right? Scrum is about process. In a loose sense, it's an adaptable process, but it is about process. It's about delivering value and really being efficient. So don't make your CVs huge or tiny. And I tend to see one or the other from service leavers, right? It's either 15 pages or it's like 3/4 of a page and we're struggling. Talk about those key outcome-based roles that you've had. And like Jake said, really align it with those transferable skills because honestly, we don't have people with your level of skills applying for jobs. What we do have, though, who are people who are very used to tailoring their CVs to play the game. So really consider, and I'm sure Jake and I mean, I'm perfectly happy to take looks at CVs to make sure they're aligned with Scrum jobs. But when it comes to Scrum jobs, right, you're going to be seeing phrases like project manager, delivery manager, Scrum Master, product owner, product manager. All of these words mainly mean the same sort of thing. Your job is right now to get a foot in the door, and then you can figure out what you want to do. So let's talk then about opportunities, Jake. What kind of
Mhm.
opportunities for Scrum have you seen, like on Indeed, LinkedIn, that kind of stuff? Is there a lot out there?
Huge amount. Yeah, but as you mentioned, a lot of it's hidden, or the
Mm,
terminology is not quite. It doesn't. The only time I've seen Scrum. Are you happy if I mention a couple of companies that I've seen recently?
by all
Yeah.
means.
So Vodafone, they they heavily use Scrum. Whether they call it Scrum internally might be a different thing, but they ask for the Scrum qualification. Jaguar Land Rover, um, quite interestingly, they've gone from more Agile project delivery manager, and they're actually advertising for Scrum Master roles now, which is good.
Mm,
And Lloyd's Bank. So there's a variety of different industries there, all in the corporate private sector world, where you know, yes, you might have an option to go and work for one of those companies, but going in as a sort of Scrum Master, they're actively looking for that as well.
yeah.
I've spoken to a couple of recruiters recently as well. It's becoming more prevalent in the defence side as well. So again, massive opportunity for those that have got some form of security clearance to go and work on a defence side as an actual Scrum Master because they are implementing Scrum in those areas because they're now seeing the benefits.
Mm,
So that's the sort of opportunities I'm seeing at the moment.
yeah.
Obviously, you've got hybrid, work from home, remote working, all that sort of stuff, which is, I suppose, a freedom that some people might actually want now that they're free to do what they need to do.
Absolutely. What you will do, right? And if you don't believe Jake or I, right, just literally go onto Indeed, LinkedIn, jobs, wherever, just type the word Scrum. You will see it come up in developer jobs. You will see it come up in project manager jobs. They'll say, we want some experience with Scrum. You might hear other words like Kanban and Safe. Do your own research about Safe before you talk to me. I'm not a fan. Delivery managers, particularly, that's a government centric kind of phrase. So I do government work mainly. We have a lot of delivery managers, agile, sometimes called agile project managers, people who do budgets, but we have loads of different words to describe the same sort of thing. So honestly, don't get put off by the name of the role, right? In terms of use of Scrum, like Jake said, if people develop products, 85% the chances are they're going to be using Scrum or some form of Scrum, right? You will read that guide and think this is simple. I don't think I've ever seen it in my 7 years applied as per the guide, right? Because people are the bits that create the problems. I know people aren't problems, but they damn well create them. And yes, it's still hugely prevalent in software, in government stuff, but also banking, fintech, right? Insurance companies, website delivery, so fashion houses and stuff like that, right? This is all Scrum-based development. And we are crying out for not just Scrum Masters and product owners, but good Scrum Masters and product owners. And that's a really key difference. Anyone can get the certification and the options we'll talk about in a sec. But really what we need are those people with the right mentality, willingness to help. And if you've got any experience of doing that, you are home and dry, I would hope. It's not easy to get a job, but nothing's ever easy, particularly when I say bottom level, I don't mean in terms of salary or expectation or anything like that. I just mean you're coming into a new career fresh. It's always quite competitive at the base, but you guys have got to step up. All right, let's talk about certifications, I guess, briefly. I said this isn't going to be about sales, so I'm going to keep this very, very factual, even though I know I have a bias here. So I'm going to let Jake do a little bit. Jake, talk about certifications a bit.
Yeah, so I've done the Professional Scrum Master 1/I. Is it PSM 1 or
PSM 1?
Yeah, it's PSM 1. Yeah, PSM 1 course, which is the Professional Scrum Master. There's also the PSPO, which is a Professional Scrum Product Owner course, and both of them go level 1 and level 2. That's on the Scrum.org side. Again, Ryan could probably give a lot more detail around the Scrum Alliance. So you've got the Certified Scrum Master and the Certified Scrum Product Owner courses. I don't know too much about them, but I'd quite happily recommend Ryan's way of delivering PSM via Scrum Lake as a very informative and engaging way of learning about Scrum.
I will send you your check after this vlog.
Appreciate that.
So just to explain, right? You can do certifications on Scrum through a lot of different bodies, right? You'll have Agile Project Management in Scrum, Scrum Foundations, all of that. There are 2 certifying bodies really in the world that matter. Scrum Alliance, which you can find out about. They offer something called the CSM, the Certified Scrum Master. That is a course that you have to do the course for, and that's the only way you get your certification. You then have to pay every 2 years, $200 to keep it up to date. So that's one option, completely valid option. Or you've got the PSM route, and that's the one I train. The reason why I train is my values align with it more, because we say you don't need to attend the course. We always recommend it, particularly if you've got no experience. But if you want to, you can just go straight onto Scrum.org site, pay $150 or $200, take the certification. And I can tell you now, it's bloody hard. But with the right study, you can self-study and pass that. There's no problem. You don't need to spend LCAS with us. But what I would say is if you are brand new to it, I would strongly encourage it. You then have, like I said, we do the PSM. There is PSM2, PSM3, PSPO2, PSPO3, and a whole host of other certifications. You do not need them. Your job ads, when you go onto LinkedIn or Reed, will ask for, if it's for Scrum, CSM or PSM. PSM is probably more common in the UK. CSM is more common in America and probably in India and a little bit of Africa. But they're both valid. I don't want to say anything against CSM. We offer the PSM bundle, which is the PSM class and the PSPO class for 1 LCAS credit. If you want to talk more about that, email me, but I don't want to talk about it on this video. Brilliant, Jake. We have covered a lot here. Is there anything you think as a service leaver you would have wanted to know about Scrum sort of 3 months ago when your journey really started?
I think we've covered pretty much everything. So we've covered, what is Scrum? What is a Scrum Master? Looked at potential career routes, certification going towards it, how it differs in project management, or how it differs to project management. I think that's the basis really. And then it's just understanding the Scrum guide after that really. So I think all bases are covered.
Fantastic. Well, look, everyone, I hope you found this informative and interesting. If you've got any further questions, you're very welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'm sure Jake says the same.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and follow the Scrum series as well.
Brilliant. So yeah, connect with us, ask us any questions, and hopefully you found this interesting. So yeah, share it to people who might be interested. Have a nice afternoon, everyone.
Cheers, guys.